Before the name Riley Reid became one of the most recognized names on the internet, it belonged to a young woman living a life that looked remarkably ordinary. No spotlight, no controversy, no expectations of global fame, just a quiet existence shaped by uncertainty, curiosity, and the universal desire to find purpose. Riley Reid was born on July 9, 1991, in Miami Beach, Florida. She grew up in a middle-class American household, far removed from celebrity culture or public attention. Her childhood was not defined by privilege or ambition for fame. Like many children, she experienced school, friendships, insecurities, and the slow realization that adulthood would eventually demand answers she did not yet have. As a child, Riley was known for being introverted. She was not naturally confident, nor did she seek attention. In fact, she often struggled with social anxiety and self-doubt. These early personality traits would later stand in sharp contrast to the public image the world would assign to her, an image that few understood and even fewer questioned. She attended local schools in Florida, where she blended in rather than stood out. Teachers did not predict stardom. Classmates did not foresee controversy. There were no signs that her life would become a public debate. At that stage, Riley Reid was simply another young woman trying to understand herself in a world that offered few clear instructions. After graduating high school, she enrolled at Florida International University. She chose to study psychology, a decision that revealed a deeper curiosity about the human mind, emotions, and behavior. It was not a superficial choice. Psychology reflected her desire to understand people and perhaps herself as well. But college life did not deliver certainty. Financial pressure, emotional confusion, and a growing sense of disconnection began to take hold. Riley has spoken openly about how lost she felt during this period. Like many young adults, she questioned whether she was moving toward a meaningful future or simply following expectations placed upon her. Eventually, she left university before completing her degree. This moment marked a turning point, not a failure, but a crossroads. Leaving school forced her to confront adulthood head-on, without a safety net, without a clear plan. After college, Riley worked ordinary jobs. Retail, customer service, long hours, modest pay, and the daily reality of financial survival. These years were quiet, difficult, and formative. They taught her independence, responsibility, and the weight of self-reliance. It was during this vulnerable period, young, uncertain, financially pressured, that an opportunity appeared. It was not part of a grand vision. It was not a dream pursued since childhood. It was a decision made in a moment where options felt limited and the future unclear. That single decision would change everything. What followed was not a slow transition, but a rapid transformation. Recognition came quickly. Attention followed immediately. And before Riley fully understood what was happening, her name became known far beyond her personal world. Fame, especially sudden fame, is rarely gentle. It does not arrive with instructions. It does not pause to ask if someone is ready. It simply takes privacy, anonymity, and often control. As Riley Reid's public profile grew, the distance between her private self and her public identity widened. The internet began to define her before she had the chance to define herself. Opinions formed rapidly. Labels became permanent. And judgment arrived without context. This is where her story begins to reflect something much larger than one individual. It reflects how modern fame works, how quickly a person can become a symbol, and how rarely that symbol is allowed to change. Behind the recognition were emotional consequences few people saw. Anxiety, pressure, the feeling of being trapped inside an image she did not fully recognize. Riley has spoken candidly about how overwhelming this period was, about the mental toll of constant visibility and relentless judgment. Success arrived, but peace did not. And this is where we pause, not because the story slows down, but because it accelerates in ways few people are prepared for. because the next chapter of Riley Reid's life would force her to confront something far more difficult than fame itself: responsibility. Responsibility arrived quietly, but its weight was enormous. As Riley Reid's name grew more recognizable, the expectations placed upon her multiplied. Fame no longer belonged to her alone. It belonged to audiences, platforms, and opinions that felt entitled to shape her future. With success came financial stability, something she had never experienced before. For the first time, survival was no longer her primary concern. But stability brought a different kind of pressure. Every decision now felt permanent. Every mistake felt amplified. And every personal struggle became harder to process in private. Riley has spoken openly about how isolating fame can be, especially when it arrives early. Friends begin to change. Motives become unclear. Trust becomes fragile. The world around you grows louder, but genuine connection becomes rarer. In many ways, she was surrounded by attention yet deeply alone. As her career progressed, Riley became one of the most recognized figures in her industry. Awards followed. Rankings followed. Headlines followed. To the outside world, her life looked like a story of effortless success. But internally, the cost was accumulating. The internet, unlike real life, does not forget. It archives. It repeats. It freezes moments in time and refuses to let them fade. Riley began to realize that no matter how much she changed as a person, public perception lagged behind, sometimes by years, sometimes forever. This realization marked a critical emotional shift. Instead of chasing approval, she began questioning it. Why did strangers feel ownership over her identity? Why was growth celebrated in theory but resisted in practice? These questions did not have easy answers. Mental health became an unavoidable subject. Anxiety was not occasional, it was constant. Depression was not dramatic, it was quiet and persistent. Riley has described periods where she felt disconnected from herself, unsure whether the person the world saw had anything to do with who she truly was. At the same time, family relationships were evolving under pressure. Fame does not exist in isolation. It spills into homes, conversations, and expectations. Riley has acknowledged that navigating family dynamics while living a highly public life was difficult. Understanding did not always come easily, but time and honesty slowly rebuilt bridges. As years passed, Riley began to think beyond immediate success. She started asking long-term questions. What does life look like after peak visibility? Who am I when the cameras turn away? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of future do I want to build? These questions coincided with a gradual shift in how she approached her public life. She became more selective, more guarded, less interested in feeding the machine that once defined her. This was not retreat, it was recalibration. During this period, Riley met Pasha Petkuns, a Latvian professional freerunner and athlete. Their relationship did not grow under the glare of constant publicity. Instead, it developed quietly, grounded in shared values rather than public validation. For Riley, this relationship represented something new: stability without spectacle. Marriage marked a symbolic turning point. In 2021, Riley Reid married Pasha, stepping into a chapter defined less by external approval and more by internal alignment. It was a clear signal that her priorities had changed. Marriage also changed how she viewed her past. Not with denial, not with shame, but with perspective. She began to understand that survival decisions made at one stage of life do not have to define an entire identity. Motherhood would later deepen that understanding. Becoming a parent forces clarity like nothing else. It reframes success, it reshapes values, and it brings responsibility into sharper focus than fame ever could. Riley has spoken about how motherhood grounded her, how it shifted her attention from public opinion to personal purpose. The future was no longer abstract. It was tangible. It had a face. It demanded intention. Yet even as she stepped into these roles, the internet remained fixed on an older version of her. This tension, between who she was becoming and who the world insisted she remain, defines much of her later life. And that tension reveals a harsh truth about modern culture. We claim to believe in growth, redemption, and second chances. But when faced with real examples, our patience often disappears. Riley Reid's story exposes that contradiction. It forces us to confront how easily we reduce people to moments, decisions, or labels, and how rarely we allow them to move forward. By this stage of her life, Riley was no longer chasing relevance. She was chasing peace, and those two goals rarely align. But the most challenging part of her journey was still unfolding, because the question she now faced was not about fame, money, or identity. It was about legacy. Legacy is a word people usually associate with presidents, artists, or historical figures. Few expect to confront it while still young. Yet for Riley Reid, legacy arrived early, not by choice, but by consequence. At some point, she realized that no matter what she did next, a version of her past would always exist in public memory. Not because she wanted it to, but because the internet does not age the way humans do. It preserves moments indefinitely, stripping them of context while amplifying their impact. This realization created a quiet internal conflict. How do you build a future when the past is permanently searchable? How do you raise a family when your name carries opinions formed long before your present self existed? Riley began to understand that legacy is not only about what you do, it is about what others choose to remember. And that distinction matters deeply in a culture driven by clicks, outrage, and simplified narratives. She has spoken about how judgment often arrives without curiosity. People are quick to label, slow to listen, and reluctant to imagine complexity. In her case, the label became louder than the person. And once a label sticks, removing it feels almost impossible. Yet what makes Riley's journey unique is that she did not attempt to erase her past. She did not pretend it never happened. Instead, she chose something far more difficult: acceptance without surrender. Acknowledging who she was, while insisting on the right to grow beyond it. This approach challenges the way society typically handles public figures. We often demand either apology or defiance, redemption arcs or downfall narratives. What we struggle with most is neutrality, the idea that someone can simply move forward without spectacle. Riley's life in recent years reflects that quiet resistance. Fewer public appearances, more privacy, less explanation. Not because she owes the world silence, but because she no longer seeks permission to live authentically. Motherhood intensified this resolve. Raising a child forces honesty. It strips away illusions and focuses attention on values. Riley has expressed a desire to ensure that her child grows up understanding that people are more than their worst decisions, and more than their most visible ones. This is where her story intersects with a much larger cultural question. In the digital age, we often say that people should be held accountable. But we rarely define what accountability actually looks like over time. Is it endless punishment, permanent judgment, or is it growth paired with responsibility? Riley Reid's existence challenges us to answer that question honestly. She is not asking for sympathy. She is not asking for forgiveness. She is simply living, and in doing so, exposing the discomfort many people feel when confronted with change that does not fit a clean narrative. What makes her story particularly relevant today is how common her situation has become. Young people achieve visibility faster than wisdom. Decisions made at 20 are replayed at 40. Context collapses. Empathy thins. Riley's experience is not an anomaly, it is a preview. A preview of a world where millions of people will one day confront versions of themselves they no longer recognize, preserved online without expiration dates. In this sense, Her story becomes less about her and more about us. About how we judge. About how we remember. About whether we believe humans are capable of evolution. She represents a generation caught between opportunity and exposure, freedom and permanence. A generation that learned too late that the internet never truly looks away. Yet despite this weight, Riley has chosen not to disappear. She exists in a middle space, neither defending nor denying her past, neither chasing approval nor hiding from judgment. That choice alone is radical, because it refuses the extremes. It refuses outrage. It refuses erasure. It insists on something quieter and harder: continuity. Life, after all, does not stop when a chapter ends. It continues, often away from applause, often without validation. Riley Reid's life today reflects that reality. A woman no longer defined by momentum, but by intention. A person shaping her future not through explanation, but through action. And perhaps the most important part of her story is this: she did not collapse under judgment. She adapted. She recalibrated. She kept going, not as a symbol, not as a cautionary tale, but as a human being. And that may be the most uncomfortable truth of all. Because if Riley Reid is allowed to grow, then maybe everyone should. By this stage of her life, Riley Reid understood something that many people never fully grasp. Closure is a myth. There is no single moment where the past neatly resolves itself, where judgment disappears, or where identity becomes fixed and universally accepted. Life does not offer that kind of ending. Instead, life offers continuation. Riley's story, when viewed honestly, is not one of escape or reinvention in the dramatic sense. It is a story of coexistence, learning how to live with a past that cannot be erased while refusing to let it dictate every future step. This is not easy. It requires emotional discipline. It requires resilience. And above all, it requires the courage to accept that not everyone will ever change their mind. Riley has reached a point where she no longer measures her worth by public reaction. That shift did not happen overnight. It was the result of years spent under scrutiny, years of internal conflict, and years of learning that approval is a currency that never truly satisfies. What replaced that need was something quieter, but far more powerful: clarity. Clarity about what matters. Clarity about who belongs in her life. Clarity about what kind of environment she wants to build for her family. Marriage and motherhood did not erase her past, nor were they meant to. They simply added depth to her present. They grounded her in responsibilities that extend beyond public narrative and online commentary. Raising a child in the age of permanent digital memory forces difficult questions. How do you explain judgment to someone who hasn't earned it? How do you teach confidence in a world that weaponizes opinion? How do you model self-acceptance when society struggles to offer it? Riley's answer has not been loud. It has been lived. She has chosen privacy over performance, intention over impulse, and most importantly, growth over approval. Her current life does not demand attention, and that may be its greatest strength. It exists outside the cycle of outrage and validation that once defined her. And in doing so, it challenges a system that thrives on freezing people in time. What Riley Reid ultimately represents is not controversy, but contradiction. She forces us to confront the uncomfortable gap between what we claim to believe and how we actually behave. We say people can change, until they do. We say context matters, until it complicates judgment. We say we value humanity, until it demands empathy. Her life is a mirror held up to internet culture itself. And that mirror reflects something unsettling. It reflects a world where visibility arrives faster than maturity, where mistakes are permanent, but understanding is temporary, where people are encouraged to be authentic, as long as that authenticity fits within acceptable boundaries. Riley Reid crossed those boundaries early in life. And for that, she became a permanent reference point in debates about morality, choice, and consequence. But what often gets lost in those debates is the most basic truth of all. She did not stop being human when the world decided who she was. She continued to wake up, to grow older, to change her mind, to build relationships, to love, to fear, to hope. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of her story. Not that she became famous, but that she kept living afterward. Because fame at its core is not the hardest part. Living with it is. Riley Reid's journey does not offer simple lessons or clean conclusions. It offers something far more valuable: perspective. A reminder that every name we argue about online belongs to a real person whose life extends far beyond our screens. Her story asks us to slow down our judgment, to question our certainty, and to recognize that identity is not static. It is lived, revised, and redefined over time. And maybe that's the final truth we're meant to take away. Riley Reid is not a headline. She is not a phase. She is not a single decision. She is a life still. Unfolding. ND, this is where the story truly leaves us, not with answers, but with a question. If the internet never forgets, should people be allowed to move on? Because Riley Reid is not the last person who will face this reality. She may be one of the first, but she won't be the last.